President Spencer W. Kimball once said that the most important word in the dictionary is the word remember. Perhaps the reason this word is so important is because it causes an awakening in our minds and in our hearts of things long since past, memories, feelings, valuable learning experiences that touch our lives in some way.
Let's take a few moments and remember the week of July 11th, 2011, the beginning of the Roy South Stake Handcart Trek. 155 years earlier, 5 handcart companies of nearly 1,900 people traveled from Iowa City, Iowa to the Salt Lake Valley. The first 3 companies traveled safely with limited problems. Less than 27 of the 816 members of those companies died during the journey of nearly 1,300 miles.
The Willie and Martin Handcart companies, along with the Hunt and Hodgett wagon companies, left Iowa City late that season. They made slow but steady progress across the country until October 15th. It was on this day atop the high desert plateaus of Wyoming that they encountered a cold and fierce winter storm that would eventually claim the lives of so many courageous saints. Upon word of their plight, President Brigham Young marshaled the resources of the church and sent rescuers from the Salt Lake Valley to the starving and beleaguered souls of these companies.
Approximately 190 of the 1,076 members of the Willie and Martin Handcart companies died during this incredible journey. Their faith, courage, and sacrifice to follow the prophet and come to Zion will always be remembered.
It all began for us on Monday, July 11th, 2011. We assembled at the Stake Center, and after a brief devotional, we were on our way.
Ye saints who dwell on Europe's shore, prepare yourselves with many more to leave behind your native land, for sure God's judgments are at hand. For you must cross the raging main before the promised land you gain, and with the faithful make a start to cross the plains with your handcart. For some must push and some must pull as we go marching up the hill. So merrily on our way we go until we reach the valley of the land that boasts of modern light. We know they're all as dark as night, where poor men toil and want for bread, and rich men's dogs are better fed. The land that boasts of liberty, I ne'er again would wish to see, when we from England make a start to cross the plains with our handcart. As on the road carts were pulled, would very much surprise the world to see the old and feeble dame.
We stopped briefly in Rock Springs, Wyoming for a break from the long hours spent riding on our buses. The shade of the trees and the green grass of the park, along with treats provided, made this a welcome stop.
And children too will laugh and play. Their strength increases day by day. For some must push and some must pull, we go marching up the hill. So merrily on our way we go until we reach the valley. Some will say it is too bad the saints upon the foot to pad, but then we say it is the plan to gather up the best of men.
We arrived at Martin's Cove at 2 p.m. and we're grateful to have traveled in safety. We unpacked our buckets and had a quick lunch that we had brought from home. We then got to meet our new Trek families. We were all a little anxious to see who we would be spending so much time with over the course of the coming days.
We also received the name and story of the pioneer we would be walking in behalf of. Much prayer and thought went into these names, and it would soon become apparent that unseen connections would be made between the youth and leaders and those that had walked the trails so many years before.
Our paws were given a quick orientation, and then our little hand carts were assigned. As we watched these carts roll out, it was hard to imagine all of the belongings of an entire pioneer family packed into such a small space, and then pushed and pulled across desert, plain, and mountain.
With lunch finished, our buckets loaded, and assembled in our family groups, we made our way to the visitor center to watch a short movie about the personal experiences of one of the families that were part of the Martin Company. At the conclusion of the short devotional, we were on our way down the trail.
Will you come with me, my Phyllis dear, to yon blue mountain free, where the blossoms smell the sweetest? Come rove along with me. It's every Sunday morning when I am by your side. We'll jump into the wagon and we'll all take a ride. Wait for the wagon, wait for the wagon, wait for the wagon, and we'll all take a ride. Where the river runs like silver and the birds they sing so sweet. I have a cabin, Phyllis, and there's something good to eat. Come listen to my story, it will relieve my heart.
It was a 3-mile walk to Cherry Creek Campground. The temperature was in the mid-80s, breezy, and we were traveling over fairly even terrain, so it was great. It was so exciting to finally start and think about the pioneers feeling the same way. Our trek had finally begun.
Did you believe, my Phyllis dear, old Mike with all his wealth can make you half so happy as I with youth and health? We have a little farm, a horse, a pig, a cow, and you will mind the dairy and I will guide the plow. Wait for the wagon, wait for the wagon, wait for the wagon, and we'll all take a ride. Your lips are red as poppies, your hair is smooth and neat, all braided up with daisies and hollyhocks so sweet. It's every Sunday morning when I am by your side. We'll jump into the wagon and we'll all take a ride. Wait for the wagon, wait for the wagon, wait for the wagon, and we'll all take a ride. Together on life's journey, we'll travel till we stop. And if we have no trouble, we'll reach the happy top. Then come with me, my Phyllis, and my lovely bride. We'll jump into the wagon and we'll all take a ride. Wait for the wagon, wait for the wagon, wait for the wagon, and we'll all take a ride.
It took us about an hour and a half to get to camp, and when we got there, our wonderful support crew had already taken all of our belongings out of the trailer and started cooking our spaghetti dinner. So the first thing we did was set up camp.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
With dinner finished, we took to square dancing with another steak in camp.
Tuesday morning came early. Really, really, really early. 6 a.m. early. After a delicious breakfast of pancakes, bacon, and eggs, we were somewhat ready for the day. Each family decorated a flag and decided what the family would be called. We learned from this experience that we have a lot of creative youth in our stake. It was really fun.
With our flags mounted to our handcarts, we were off. Today we were to travel roughly 7 miles towards Martin's Cove. Pushing the handcart was fun, but it was very hot out. We'd all read and heard about the pioneers. For months and months prior to arriving here, we had tried to prepare both physically and spiritually for this trek. However, it wasn't until we were actually pushing and pulling our handcarts and camping every night that we finally understood and appreciated what the pioneers endured. They were remarkable.
Come, come, ye saints, no toil nor labor fear, but with joy wend your way. Though hard to you this journey may appear, grace shall be as your day. 'Tis better far for us to strive, our useless cares from us to drive. Do this and joy your hearts will swell. All is well, all is well. Why should we mourn or think our lot is hard? 'Tis not so, all is right. Why should we think to earn a great reward if we now shun the fight? Gird up your loins, fresh courage take, our God will never us forsake, and soon we'll have this tale to tell. All is well, all is well. And should we die before our journey's through, happy day, all is well. We then are free from toil and sorrow too. With the just we shall dwell. But if our lives are spared again to see the saints their rest obtain, oh, how we'll make this chorus swell. All is well, all is well.
About halfway to the cove, we stopped and heard the story of Eliza Cusworth Burton Staker.
We continued onward a little farther down the road and stopped at the statues that commemorate the 4 young men who were willing to spend the whole day in the freezing Sweetwater River in order to help others across. We would learn more about them later in the day.
We then traveled a short distance to the base of Martin's Cove. The presence of the Spirit was strong, and you could tell the ground we were walking on was sacred. We made our way to a small secluded spot on the edge of the cove. As we entered the area, Brother Tim Willard was playing a harmonica. The sweet music brought a powerful spirit to rest upon us all.
One of the missionaries told us a little about the cove and what the Martin Company went through while there. The company had moved to the cove for shelter from the bitter winter storms. Many died from starvation and exposure. They were buried in shallow graves because it was impossible to break into the frozen soil.
Entering the cove was a sacred experience. Many lives were sacrificed to heed a prophet's voice. Very little was said as we walked. What a powerful yet silent testimony it was for the truthfulness of the gospel. We listened to Brother Blake Stewart's song, "When the Angels Come," and many of us were moved to tears.
me. Look around, they're gone. Wish I could see when the angels come.
As we made our way down from the cove, we were greeted by the view of the great valley thousands and thousands of pioneers traversed as they sought Zion.
After a quick lunch, we were on our way to the crossing of the Sweetwater River. We listened to the story of the Martin Company and the rescue teams sent from Salt Lake City and of the many sacrifices made. It was moving for all of us as we listened to music while 4 young men reenacted one of the most celebrated stories of the handcart legacy. And then, just like that, it was our turn to cross. Of our party of 206, all but 12 crossed the river.
Having crossed the Sweetwater River, some of us multiple times, we collected our family members and headed back to camp. It was a moderate trek back and kind of fun as we were all wringing wet. After a delicious dinner, we assembled for a visit from Ephraim Hanks and his beloved wife, Thisbe Reed, and listened to their wonderful stories. After family devotionals, we all relaxed around the fires until it was time for bed.
We arose early once again, and I mean early, and after a quick breakfast, headed to Six Crossing. We soon learned that in pioneer language, Six Crossing means mosquito. We quickly set up camp, and then the moths were called forward and given babies that would now be a part of each family. We slathered on the sunscreen, filled our water bottles, and took our first bath of the trek, only it was in mosquito spray. And with that, we started on our 10-mile trek around Rock Creek Hollow. It would be the beginning of a remarkable time.
We soon learned that wind, rain, heat, dry sand, and dust, along with the relentless sun, were constant companions of the handcart pioneers. We encountered a lot of obstacles along the way. Some must push and some must pull. And some must get muddy seemed to be our motto.
Misfortune soon struck our company in the form of sisters Kathy Davis and Patty Rencher and their little white papers of trouble. These trials were things like Indians have scattered your belongings, or your wheel's broken, or your family's been bitten by snakes, all of which entailed pulling off the trail for 5 minutes and rejoining the handcart train at the very end. Even with all these problems, our company continued to make steady progress towards Zion, or at least lunch.
We were soon on the trail once more. The storm clouds gathered and the wind blew hard as we were informed that the men were leaving their families. It was the woman's pole. The priesthood of God lined both sides of the steep trail as the women came into view. For the young men, it was difficult to watch these courageous women wrestle their handcarts up the steep slope, and for the women to see the hats removed and the silence of the young men as they passed helped instill in them a greater respect for the priesthood of the Almighty God. It was a sight to behold.
As the last of the handcarts passed through the priesthood, those young women who had made it to the top returned down the hill to help the others. The young men bolted from their ranks and ran to assist the last in line. The respect that both we as young men and young women gained for each other will certainly last us a lifetime. Atop the hill, we were all family.
We continued on our way. Misfortune, however, struck again, as some of the families received the news that they had lost their babies and had to leave them on the trail. Many of us cried as we knew we were only feeling a small part of what it must have been like for the pioneers who had to leave their small children behind in unmarked graves or simply wrapped in blankets on the frozen ground.
Tragedy continued to plague us as family members began to die. They were turned into angels, allowed to walk behind the carts, but unable to speak to their living relatives or help push the handcart. We were separated from these family members who had now begun to feel like members of our real families. They were right behind us, but we still felt cut off from them, separated, even if only for a short while.
The grade soon changed, and we found ourselves gradually descending towards camp. We had been through a lot together during this grueling day, and now, with Zion in sight, as it were, we began to laugh and sing and talk. Even the deadly rattlesnake could not dampen our mood. Some were brave. Others were frightened. And still others were hysterical.
When we arrived back in camp, we were told that the rations for the pioneers went from 1 pound of flour a day to 4 ounces for an adult. We were given a small bag that contained 4 ounces of flour and enough material and thread to make our own small flour pouch. We had to have these ready for our evening meal. For some it was a simple task, and for many others it was a very painful experience. Again, we learned that some must push and some must pull, and still others have to sew.
That night, we enjoyed a mouth-watering meal of stew and hot scones with honey butter and, of course, watermelon. It was a great way to end our faith-building day. We arose Thursday morning at 6:45, hooray, and broke camp. It seemed to us that we were always setting up camp or taking it down. It soon dawned on us, however, that this was the same routine followed day after day for the handcart companies. Most of us quit complaining and just did what needed to be done. When our gear was stowed in the trailers, we boarded the buses for Rock Creek Hollow.
Rock Creek Hollow was the site of the Willie Handcart Rescue. It was a beautiful area, and our camp was situated alongside the river. We were informed that once camp was set up, we could enjoy the river, and enjoy it we did. Although the water was cold, a lot of us jumped right in. Some played and wrestled, while others took the opportunity to bathe after so many grueling days without a bath. Water is a remarkable thing in the high deserts of Wyoming, and we enjoyed it to its fullest. Even some of the leaders joined in.
After the river, we enjoyed one of the pleasures the pioneers were fond of, square dancing. While this style of dance was still pretty new to most of us, it was a time filled with lots of smiles and laughter. lot of our youthful energy spent, we prepared ourselves for a deeply moving fireside in the area made sacred by Willie Handcart Company itself.
As we entered Rock Creek Hollow, we were asked to remain silent as we passed the burial site of the 13 who died. These stalwart saints had all passed away in one night with the Willie Company. 2 more graves were close by for the 2 men who had buried them and then perished themselves the next day from exposure.
We listened, without distractions, to some of the stories of those who died near Rocky Ridge, as told from their own perspective, as well as about the history of the area and the second rescue. It was a time when the Holy Ghost was unencumbered by outside distractions. It was an evening when the Spirit bore witness that these pioneers had not died in vain, but were taken for a greater purpose, a purpose for which we now were benefiting.
We returned to camp and found a Pony Express rider waiting with letters from home. Our names were called out, and we quickly found private places where we could read. Reading from parents and family members who truly loved us was so touching. Many of us realized, perhaps for the first time, how much we were really loved by our own families.
We finished the evening with 2 deeply moving testimony meetings. The Spirit was truly poured out upon us as we shared some of our most private feelings. As we sat around the campfire and watched the moon rise, we were told it was this same moon under which the pioneers sat on this very spot. It was the perfect ending to a most remarkable experience.
We awoke the next morning, as we did most mornings, with Brother Stewart singing us awake.
Arise, 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 arise. Wake ye, arise, God is watching thee. Wake ye, arise, ever watchful be. Mother Life, God, she is calling thee. Mother Life, God, she is greeting thee. Arise, 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 arise. Wake ye, arise, God is watching thee. Wake ye, arise, ever watchful be. Mother Life, God, she is calling thee. Mother Life, God, she is greeting thee. Arise, 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 arise. Wake ye, arise, God is watching thee. Wake ye, arise, ever watchful be. Mother Life, God, she is calling thee. Mother Life, God.
As we returned home, we were unprepared for the welcome we received. Banners and signs and cheers greeted us as we pulled into the stake center. Hugs and kisses, handshakes, and pats on the back were had by all. It was the concluding event to what for many of us had been a life-altering experience.
Thanks is not enough to express our appreciation for all the hours spent in preparation for our trek. Perhaps, however, the best way for us to truly say thank you is to live our lives in such a way that we always remember to be standing in holy places.
And